kids, how are you doing? I'm so glad you're here with me. This is Grow with Miss Nancy, and this is another week where we're going to talk about feelings. What would it take for you to feel like you're a valuable person? Would maybe a friend of yours ask you to go off on vacation on a trip or something with their family? Would that make you feel very valuable? Yeah. What if you won an award or got a certificate or maybe a trophy from a teacher or a coach? Would that make you feel kind of like you're real important and valued? What if someone is listening to you tell something, they're looking you right in your eyes and they're listening to every word? Would that make you feel valuable? Yeah. And what if somebody decided that they were going to celebrate a special occasion? Maybe it was your birthday, and they had a big surprise birthday party and all your friends came and everybody was celebrating you. Would that make you feel valued? Yeah. Well, there's a story in the Bible about a fella who felt very valued, and his name was Nehemiah. Even though Nehemiah was a slave to the king of Persia, he was pretty important to the king. You see, back then, kings had to be careful because, somebody might try to kill them and take over. And so they would have people who would taste their food. They would have people who would drink out of the very cup they were going to drink out of to make sure it wasn't poisoned. And that was Nehemiah's job. He was the cupbearer. He would take a sip out of everything that the king of Persia would drink to make sure there was no poison in it. Now remember, if there was poison in it, who would die? Nehemiah, right? Yeah, well, but that was his job. So also it was really, really important that everybody who was around the king of Persia looked happy, because if they were sad looking, that would look like things weren't so great for the whole place, right? That maybe everything wasn't right, and that would be the king's fault. So everybody had to look happy all the time. Well, there was one day when Nehemiah had heard that his hometown, Jerusalem, had been attacked and the walls had all fallen down and the gates were all burnt up. And that made him really sad, and he was having a very hard time trying to look happy. As a matter of fact, he was looking pretty sad that day, and he had never looked sad before. And so he's standing there by the king of Persia, and the king of Persia looks at him and he says, "Nehemiah, what is wrong with you? You look very sad." And he said, "Well, I have to be honest, I am very sad. I found out that the walls of my hometown Jerusalem have been knocked down terribly and the gates burned up and nobody's doing anything about it, and it just hurts my heart so bad." And the king looked at his queen and said, "You know what, I bet we can help with this." He valued Nehemiah, and he said, "You know what, why don't you go check on it? If you were to do that, how long would you be gone?" And Nehemiah said, "Well," and he told him, "Don't you know it was probably at least a year?" Because it was a long ways away, and you remember they didn't have cars or jets or planes or anything. You had to walk every place you go. And so the king said, "You know what? I think that's doable. And as a matter of fact, I'll give you some money, be able to buy all the supplies that you need to fix it." And he let him go. And so he went to Jerusalem, and there in Jerusalem, he told the fellows that he was there to help them out. And that night, in the dark, he took a couple other fellows with him, and he rode around the outside of Jerusalem to see what the condition of the walls were and what the condition of the many gates were. Oh boy, it was a whole lot worse than he ever guessed. But God gave him a plan. And he was able the next day to go back and tell these guys that were all of these leaders that were left who were doing nothing to help build back the walls, build back the gates, none of that stuff. And he said, "Okay, I'm here the king of Persia has given us money and supplies. We're going to work together, and we are going to build these walls back, and we are going to fix the gates, and we're going to put Jerusalem back like it was. God gave him that plan. And you know that made him very happy. The sadness turned to joy when all of that got fixed. Don't you know he felt very valuable that the king of Persia allowed him to go? That God arranged it. He knew God was in on this. That God worked things out so that he could leave that position and come and stay such a long time to help fix these walls and fix these gates so that Jerusalem, which is God's city, was put back together. God was happy, Nehemiah was happy, the people were happy. You know, God can help us feel very valued because he loves us so much. He's working behind the scenes even right now in your lives to make things work out well. I'm happy to hear that. And I'm happy for me about that too, because he's worked in my life in many, many ways. I've told you about some of the stories. So keep that in mind, especially when things are going well and people value you. You should value others as well. Okay? Well, I'm glad to see you. I'll see you next week. Bye.